Welcome to the Chill Polyamory Patreon-only live chat. We're the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. Berlin local time. I welcome all patrons, €3 and up, to ask me anything about non-monogamy and polyamory, anything you want. And I do bonus Sundays periodically, like today. So yeah, I'm just basically offering feedback and insight based on my experience. Do with it what you will. If you are watching this on YouTube afterwards and you want to join us next time, ask a question like specific to your own situation, I would welcome you. So that's patreon.com/chillpolyamory for $3. So yes, drop your questions in the chat as you think of them. Feel free to do a private DM if you don't want it to be public. Otherwise, I'll jump right in to the first question. Okay. My partner and close friend are attracted to each other. Should they be thinking about me at all in this? Is it unreasonable to ask to be talked with about them escalating their relationship? Let's get right into it, right? Let's get into kind of a more complex situation. If you are close friends with someone and then your partner is falling for them and vice versa. So yeah, I mean, it changes group dynamics, in my opinion, right? Like, let's not spring that on somebody or hide that from somebody if they are close with everybody involved, right? And check-ins are different than permission. They're not like asking you permission, you know? And so sometimes people will get defensive, you know, if you're like, hey, could you talk to me about this? They'll like misunderstand and think, hey, can you ask my permission first? Or like, I have the power to say yes or no. When that's not really what you're saying. You're like, hey, can you like factor in my emotions as you do this and like check in on what those emotions are, you know? So in a nutshell, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask to like be included in decisions that affect you. Like, well, how does all hanging out together look now? And am I sensitive to that? Or am I excited about that? Or, you know, what does that look like in your own dynamic? But like, that is the extent to which it might affect you. Now, if they're going to be escalating their relationship, and let's say your partner and you live together, I don't know your situation, and they start staying with each other like 2 or 3 nights a week. I don't want to scare you. I don't know. Again, I don't know your situation, but if your nesting partner is now gone half the week, for example, and is like ramping up how much time they spend with your close friend, then that's also a conversation because it's impacting your like housing expectations and whatever shared, you know, responsibilities you have at home, and even just like the routine that you have with your partner. Like, I feel like partners discuss routine changes with us, and that is different than asking permission, you know, and that is different than like maybe even including you in all of the decisions around their relationship. So their relationship might impact you. Can your partner and you talk about what impacts you? Can your close friend and you talk about what impacts you? And then all three, if you're able, talk about like, yeah, what does the group situation look like now? And there will probably be an evolving answer to that. So it's probably not just one conversation. I would also say don't confuse needs with wants. This is something that I mention a lot. So like, I need to feel secure as you're both changing these relationships. Like, I want you to, like, I need to feel secure is valid. Like, let's absolutely group project. Let's figure out how do we get you to feel secure. I want you to slow down your relationship. Oh, that's where it gets tricky, right? And sometimes people say, I need you to slow down your relationship. So again, I'm not saying that that's what you are bringing to your partner and your friend, but don't confuse needs with wants. I need to feel safe. I need to feel loved. I need to feel like, you know, not surprised. I don't do well with surprises, things like that, emotions. And then we can have wants, we can ask for something, but they can say no. And then we just keep going back and forth until we land on what would meet your need, you know? So I try to differentiate those two things. Okay, welcome. Got a question in the chat. I'm wondering how you feel about closed Vs, closed triads, and closed polycules in general. I've always felt conflicted in calling them polyamorous because the freedom to love multiple people outside that closed system is restricted, and the others in that relationship are with boundaries enforced, by the others in that relationship. And to me, polyamory as a concept is about autonomy and personal choice. I don't think I could ever let myself be 100% closed. What are your thoughts on closed relationships within polyamory? And do you ever see a good reason outside of children being affected to enforce relationship closure? There's a few questions in that. At its core, I don't subscribe to the idea that we can enforce what someone else does. Like, I'm big on they're grown, they could walk out the door forever if they really wanted to, right? Like, I literally don't have that power to tell them what to do. So leaning into that and being like, okay, well, I would like you to not date any other people. Again, wants versus needs. Like, this is my best idea of what I want. But if you don't want that, then, what else are we doing? So yeah, I don't co-sign people enforcing or whatever, sometimes it creates like this fundamental difference in willingness of what you're going to approach. And then you redesign your relationship or maybe step back from it. But yeah, I'm not a fan of enforcing it. However, plenty of people want polyfidelity. Like, plenty of people, welcome, new people entering. Plenty of people do want polyfidelity, just like plenty of people do want monogamy. And so it matters if it's like coercive versus freely chosen. And some people are like, I don't want to date, and this is our current situation. So I would talk to you if I would want to reopen it. Most closed relationships, polyamorous relationships, they're like, yeah, let's talk about it if you ever want to reopen. So, if it is militantly closed, I often ask why. What are you scared of? What are you trying to protect or enforce? It still is polyamorous, like if we're going into definitions of things, because you do love more than one person. But yeah, I think the existence of somebody being in that relationship structure doesn't mean that they were forced. So I ask more questions, Just like plenty of relationship anarchists will go through long stretches of being monogamous. That's just the season I want right now. That's the season I'm in, or monogamous people through and through. They're like, I only have energy and effort for this many people at a time in this kind of role, So what somebody chooses is, I differentiate that from policing what other people are allowed to choose. Okay, welcome. You can drop your questions in the chat. How can we best manage when our partners have different political views, or have people in their life that make you feel unsafe? I don't want them to feel judged or limited in who they spend their time with, but it feels hurtful to see them invest in someone who wouldn't have my back, if that makes sense. It entirely depends on like what political views, right? Like, I might date someone who's friends with a lot of like centrists, I guess, maybe. How are we dating? In what capacity, right? Like, are you a centrist? You know what I mean? But like, if somebody I'm dating keeps MAGA people in their circle, for example, I just fundamentally wouldn't feel safe, because I'm like, what is it that why don't you feel safe around them either, right? Or why do you feel safe around them? So yeah, I think the stakes matter, and it's also like a personal choice. I don't think there's a universal answer to this in terms of like your own tolerance for risk. I kind of see it as like a bit of a risk tolerance thing when people have other people in their circles that I don't fuck with, and also I don't have to hang out with them. I don't have to have a relationship with them. It is information, but I don't want to go in pre-assuming the nature of those relationships, whatever. Some people are co-parenting with people and then their extended family, so it's complicated in terms of, the nature of their relationships with those people. But I don't hang out with anybody that I don't feel safe with. So I have had conversations with people where I'm like, I don't want to go to that party because those friends of yours, like, I'm not confident they wouldn't say a comment that ruins my night, right? Frankly, I don't feel relaxed. I just plain English say why that it's not even necessarily like I'm philosophically opposed. They're in the bad group and I'm in the good group. It's like, no, I don't rest easy around those people. So I'm not going to go to that party, right? Like we set our own boundaries of like how much we participate in something. But for your partner being the hinge, it's a conversation. Like it's clearly on your mind. I wouldn't try and figure that out alone in your head. And if you are able to talk openly with your partner about those concerns without them misunderstanding or getting defensive, or you can't control that part, but if it's on your mind and it's not being said, that will probably come out sideways in another way, and so I try to put words to it if it's like at the front of the mind. And yeah, see, I ask a lot of questions. Because I want to understand, again, risk bets with my own partner. Like I once dated a guy who did not say anything when his friends made misogynistic jokes. He just like sat there. And I was like, oh, so it's like that. Like, oh, you would not protect me either. It's not just that they would make the jokes, it's that you would be quiet when they do. So those are the kind of the questions and the things that I look out for again. And like, I might still fuck that person. You know what I mean? It's like, well, but you're hot and I'm not going to take a huge risk. Like, let's go have fun tonight, but whatever. Not necessarily, you know what I mean? But it's just sort of like, I stay tuned to how I feel and how relaxed I feel and what I'm willing to trust or not trust a person with. And then the relationship gets designed, or lack thereof gets designed based on that. And then if they're unhappy with that, then I'm like, well, this is what I need to feel safe. And I'm not telling you to change who you are or what you believe. I just don't relax totally, fully, I don't know if that's helpful. It's going to be really tailor-made. And again, it really depends on the stakes of what you're talking about. There are definitely some people that I don't spend the precious energy arguing with. But when it comes to partners or people we care about, I do try to, ask those questions and understand more their flexibility, their willingness to go to bat for you, or would they be quiet? Next question. How do you deal with parents liking one of your partners more than another and hoping that you'll settle down with them? Oh, shit. Okay, so you've introduced more than one partner to your parents, and now they're like, that's the one you should do the relationship escalator monogamy with. I'm sorry, that sucks. That's happened to me to an extent. It's not that my parents ever accepted polyamory, but I was just like, here are my people. I don't care. Like, I exist. They exist. I don't care if you accept it. So they met my dad met two of my partners, and one of them was a neuroscientist, and he was doing TED Talks. And it was like, his resume looked impressive, right? Especially for someone in their mid-20s. And met my dad, and they're both like charismatic, and they both hit it off. And I was like learning some things at that lunch, and I was like, you might be a little bit too much like my dad. I don't know if I love that. But he and my mom and my stepmom and everybody, they were like, that young fellow, he was a good egg, don't you want to move in with him? Don't you want to, like that pressure to still pursue the relationship escalator in a traditional sense, like that's all that they can imagine. And so they're trying to like nudge you. And that dude cheated on me all the time. The perception by my family being, this is the person who is stable. This is the person you should be building your life with. I was like, your priorities are very different, because I don't care what they do for work. I don't care how impressive the resume is. Like, they could drive a bus. That's great. Are they sweet to me? Are they treating me right? Are they honest with me? And so if you don't have the same value system in terms of like what you prioritize or what you value in a partner, if you don't share that with your parents, then sometimes I just say that. I'm like, what's important to you isn't important to me. Or I just bring it back, keep it simple. That's not something I want to do. You don't want to play into their narrative, so don't play into their narrative. I don't think I want that with anybody. I'm probably not going to have kids. And if I did, I'd see what I feel like at the time. Why is it that you're telling me this? Why is it that you're suggesting that? Like, sometimes I put it back on them. everybody has their own style, but you don't have to engage with the premise. You don't have to like defend yourself if they're not willing to imagine or meet you halfway. You know, if there's curiosity, if there's trying to understand, well, then what are you doing? And there's love behind it, then maybe you explain a little bit more and you try to like help hold their hand and imagine something different. But if they're just like really belligerent about it, then I just let them stay mad. I'm going to live how I'm going to live, you know? But that's just me like being incredibly stubborn. So, yeah. And reminding yourself of what feels good and true to you. Sometimes that can be disorienting when we're back around people that like we care about, who are framing the world in a way that rings false, but it's been such the message for so long that it's like, wait, am I doing, should I? You know, like if you ever doubt yourself, then go back to your anchor people and like reground of what your values are. Oh, right. Let me restabilize, you know. I'm sorry that's happening to you though. So next question, feel free to drop any more questions in the chat. I'm non-monogamous, but my dating pool is tiny, so I wind up dating monogamous people who say they're okay with it, but then change their mind and resent me. Am I doomed to never have a satisfying long-term relationship? Oh, I get a version of this question pretty often on live chats, is that this frustration with the local dating pool being incredibly narrow. And I think even in places where there are a lot of polyamorous people, just the more specific you get, the more clear you are on the type of person you want to bring in the closest roles, the fewer people there are that would fill those roles. And so I empathize a lot if like you already have a low dating pool. Try not to be fatalistic. You know, our people exist. They might not be physically around you. Digital community is incredibly valuable, you know, and there's, especially in the last few weeks, I've been seeing a lot of Discord servers pop up trying to gather people who do not have local community. So I don't know if you can search and see if there are like-minded people who are also in some kind of struggle like that you can connect with. Dating monogamous people, I think there's a difference between, oh, I'm okay with it. If a monogamous person says I'm okay with it, then I'm a little concerned because then they're tolerating it in a way that might not even be interrogating anything for themselves. They're just trying to not look at it or tolerate it, right? That can be precarious. That can blow up. Sometimes people will say, well, I'm open to trying it for you. Now, that can be a door that opens. Sometimes that is how people find non-monogamy. And they're like, actually, I love this. This is great. You know, and they realize that's what they want to, and they just needed the confidence to do it, you know, with someone. But I stay checking in, because if they say that they're doing it for this relationship, does that continue to be the motive? Because then I'm a little worried, because I'm like, this is hard. The change is hard. Big change is hard. And it is continuous work, just going deeper and deeper and deeper. So like, you gotta want it for yourself. Like, I'm never gonna do this kind of work for someone, you know? At best, I would do the bare minimum so that they wouldn't leave, you know? So like, I'm a little concerned if the motive stays doing it for the relationship. That can be a bummer. But yeah, sometimes people are like, well, I'm monogamous, but I've always been curious. And then they start reading all the things and listening to podcasts, and like, they're hungry for information too. So it really depends on their situation and how flexible and how open they currently feel, how drawn to non-monogamy they are. You know, I would much rather spend time with a newer person who is learning and hungry and maybe has been to therapy for 10 years already, you know, so they're not like new at everything, you know? And I would much rather be with a person in that like kind of collaborative, curious place than someone who has a lot of experience and is very stuck in their ways and is not going to adapt for your relationship, not going to collaborate, just being like, this is, you know, this is how it goes, my way or the highway. There's some long timers who are that way. So yeah, I don't want you to get doom and gloom about it, but do stay realistic, because a lot of people have optimism about what they can do, or if they're not yet emotionally attached to you, then they don't feel bothered by it. But whether, like, over and over and over, I've seen, consciously or unconsciously, I think often unconsciously, there's this expectation, well, if you love me enough, you'll be monogamous with me. I've seen that over and over again. So a monogamous person consenting and, being in this kind of structure, and then now there's feelings and there's a desire to do more together. And it's like, well, but don't you love me? Why don't you want to be monogamous? That's what I mean about if they are tolerating it, but not doing any of the digging, not doing any of the asking of questions of like the way they view the world. Because if they're still viewing the world through a monogamous lens, that usually comes back to bite you at some point. So I keep an eye on that. But also sometimes people are ambiamorous, like if you happen to be in that case. So I don't know, like, what does non-monogamy mean to you? I guess is another question you can ask, like to manage that person's expectations of like how committed you are to this and how this is just how it's gonna, like, you're not going to ever be monogamous again. Or if you're like, I don't know, I've been doing this for a few years, but never say never. Like, I don't know your own fluidity. So talk about it, I guess. It's a long, fancy way of saying talk about it and get clear on your individual like approaches to relationships and what you expect from especially like longer term relationships, or what you're open to anyway. So yeah. But other than meeting like-minded people online, I just try to be in places that like-minded people are. I mentioned this in last time, the live from 2 weeks ago, is like, where do my people hang out? And can I go hang out there? And they might not be polyamorous, but like if a monogamous person is doing a lot of like leftist activism, for example, then maybe I'm a little more optimistic that we're aligned in a lot of ways. And so let me see, like maybe there is this flexibility, there is this growth or curiosity that could work. And monopolyam can work. Like sometimes monogamous people are like, I genuinely don't mind that you have other partners, I just don't desire that, So like I go to where we align on a lot of other shit. And then I'm a little more hopeful. But yeah, love is never on our timeline, unfortunately. So even in monogamy, like rushing for who's here rather than who's right, it can carry risk, depending on, if it's close or distant. And it can have reward, risk reward. So, but don't let hope or optimism make you avoid looking at some red flags or signs. Okay, question in the chat. I have a very close and flirty friendship with my straight friend. She wants to create strict lines between friend and partner and is uncomfortable with me being attracted to her romantically. But that doesn't really jive with my relationship anarchist brain. How can we navigate our friendship so that we're both comfortable and neither of us have to hide or overlook our desires? So it's a straight friend. Would this be a queer dynamic? I don't know your gender, but is this person reciprocating in any way? Or are they trying to say, like, sometimes people want to create strict labels because they don't necessarily have the language to say, I want certain things to not be part of our relationship. Sometimes they're like, I just really don't want to do something romantic with you. I'm so sorry. That's just not what I want. And I don't want that to be expected or ever on the table. Sometimes they're like trying to say everything that they think goes with the label, of what a friend is. They say, let's do that versus this other stuff that I would consider partner. So you don't have to use labels yourself, but like when someone's trying to use one, it's shorthand for something. So what is it shorthand for? Maybe you've already talked about that, but like, that's where I start. Is like, okay, so what does that literally look like? If I'm a friend, what do we do? What do we not do? And you don't have to list out everything, but just like getting a vibe check, especially because she probably has like certain immediate things in mind. If she has some urgency behind wanting this distinction, she's like asking for something to be clarified for her. So yeah, and if you're attracted to her romantically and she's not reciprocating, then like you can be a relationship anarchist and negotiate with someone that they are not wanting a romantic connection. You know, so if that is the case, if they don't want a romantic connection, you're not like putting people in boxes. You've now negotiated with an individual what you do and don't do, you know, which is what anarchy is like not imposing anything. So maybe she walks away thinking she's put things in boxes. Fine, if that's how she frames things to understand them. But like, I don't necessarily, based on how you've described it, think that this conflicts with your approach to relationships. Is the negotiation, you know? So if you can try and speak the same language, like it sounds like the entry points are very different because the worldview is very different. But then if you can speak the same language and like literally talk about what feels good and what feels bad at the moment, you know? So, and this could include like she doesn't want to hear about your desires. You know, you mentioned not having to hide or overlook your desires. If she doesn't want to hear about it, if she's uncomfortable about it, you know, then that's a boundary. And, you know, and you can decide, well, that sucks that I have to not say it. Okay, I might need a breather and like not go out with you alone at night in a romantic kind of setting. You know what I mean? Like, then you can have your own boundary based on what she's saying she wants to do and not do. You can decide what you do then to not torture yourself. I've fallen for so many straight women. It's not great. It's not great. It's there's love there. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but like I've broken my own heart just trying to get something from someone that they couldn't or wouldn't give. And I just wouldn't want that for you if that's a situation. Of course, I don't know her, you know, but there's plenty of other queer people who are going to be excited to be close to you and reciprocate romance. So I want that for you too. I hope that's helpful. It's really tough. Some of my best friends turned out to be, oh, I'm in love with her. Shit, you know? That's tough to navigate. Okay. Next question. How are you doing since the bracelet video? I saw a lot of people in their feelings about it. Sure. The bracelet video, what they're referring to, I don't know if on Instagram and TikTok you saw, post the 2024 election in the US. A lot of liberals were saying like, let's do friendship bracelets that are blue. Let's put little blue hearts on them, so that we can show who's safe and so that everybody knows that I'm an ally. And I made fun of that. Like, I felt frustrated because like, look, I've gone through my own performative activism phase like a decade ago, you know, or like I probably still have layers of that, like that it would come out in a subtler way that I'm open to hearing about, you know, like I don't feel like I'm above a person who's going to be in a performative activism place, but like you're literally not doing anything. You're like making yourself feel better with a bracelet. Maybe you're telling other white people who you voted for. I think it functions in that respect. And if that's what you want, go for it, you know? But it's like this assertion that like, so other people know that I'm a safe person, that we are not entitled to safety just because we've announced that we're safe. Like we are safe if people tell us that they feel safe with us, you know? And so I was urging, like, I'm so glad you want to do something. I get the upset feeling you're having. Can you put it in a different direction? Like, can we harness this energy instead of paying another white woman to make a bracelet or paying a white-owned arts and crafts store to get the beads? Like, you know, instead of that, what if all that energy, all of that money went towards people who need it, you know, in any way, shape, or form, local or national, you know? So I don't go snarky very often, but I needed to be firm and clear because people have been firm and clear with me. And I was a little frustrated because I was like, in 2016, that was 8 years ago, and we're doing the pussy hats again. We're doing the, you know, the safety pins again. Like, have we not learned? So that also was frustrating. And I saw how many of my friends were tired, how many of my Black and brown friends were tired, you know? And then I also felt like maybe I should make a video, and because so that they don't have to have that conversation, just forward my video, you know, if you want to. Yeah, but honestly, like, how am I doing since it, like, yeah, some people were in their feelings and I knew it would be challenging, and it is tough to create media where people like have 1 minute of time with me and now they that is their idea of me. That's their impression of me, and that's their image of me, and that's all they ever know or remember about me, maybe. You know, that is tough to reckon with in terms of not having three-dimensionality personally online. But that's my job, and that's what I continue to work on behind the scenes every day. But yeah, I'm fine. If I stand on what I feel is true, then I'm comfortable with people being upset with me. I think my concern is if I'm attempting to do something that's helpful and then it actually is hurtful. And honestly, I think that's what the bracelets were. I think that was people attempting to do something helpful, maybe attempting to ease their own discomfort as well. But it's not doing what you think it's doing, you know? So that's always my concern too. That's always a worry that I have about any work that I do. And that didn't seem to be the case this time. But honestly, I think it goes a bit deeper than performative allyship. Like this shit, I'm one of the good ones, fucking pisses me off because like, you're still doing it. You're still doing the hierarchy thing of like, if we're fighting white supremacy and fascism, right? Of like people who think that they are fixed above other people. And you're saying, I'm a good white, you know, then you're still participating in that framework. And I saw it in people's reactions where they thought I was now saying, I'm better than you. I'm above you. I'm an even better white than you. And I was like, I'm not having that conversation. I'm saying like, stop it. You know, we're not above, we're like together. Can we do power with instead of power over, you know, type of deal. And it's really frustrating, like going back to some of the conversations in this chat earlier of like people who just view the world differently and we're trying to translate. It can be really frustrating, you know? So yeah, there was a lot of conversation about like the internalized, like the right to comfort is really important for, you know, anyone white especially, but I think anyone who's like impacted by white supremacist messaging, the right to comfort, the entitlement to comfort, the like wanting to be immediately relieved, and my comfort matters more than your emotions or safety. Like that's, I'm going to confront that too. So yeah, people were saying like, you know, you're continuing to divide. And I was like, I'm confronting someone who thinks that they are arm in arm with me. And I'm saying, if I saw a blue bracelet on another white woman, I would not feel safe with you. You know, if you saw me with my full coverage sleeve tattoos or partners of mine that have like face tattoos, right? Like, you know, let alone a black or brown partner or friend, like, you know, I don't feel safe with you. So your bracelet ain't doing what you think it's doing. Anyway, I don't mean to go on a rant here. I'm good, to answer your question. How am I doing after that? I'm good. It is something I'm willing to do is, yeah, that kind of uncomfortable work. One of my friends was saying that fighting, like this fight very much includes doing things that can be socially alienating, you know, like doing things that upset people who are not doing the work, you know, and there's layers to that. But like, you might be unpopular. You might get people mad at you. You might be the only one in the room saying something and they roll their eyes at you. Like that would happen before. Like I've been on board meetings. Oh, someone new is walking in. I've been like on a board of something and been like, hey, you know, I'm the only woman. There's no black or brown people here. And I was like, so let me like try and bring to the table some, you know, information about what if we consider this perspective or that perspective. And I stopped getting invited to the board meetings, you know, like just saying, let's include, I got excluded, right? So it's very much like the willingness to give up access to power and the willingness to be unpopular. And that's fucking hard. I'm not going to say it's easy, but you like yourself and you help people. You know, I don't need the comfort of a bracelet because I do feel the comfort of like connecting with people and having mutual give and take with people. So that's what I was trying to get across in 60 seconds. I don't know that I necessarily did, but okay. Alrighty. Oh, some new questions. New questions in the chat. So my nesting partner is monogamous and I am polyamorous, and it works really well for us. However, we are not out to his friends or parents. I've been openly poly for 3 years now, and I'm really starting to struggle with being in the closet. It's feeling more difficult as I'm having more and more meaningful in-person relationships and as these people become entangled in my life. Any advice on coping with that? So yeah, to be polyamorous and closeted. Do you have clarity on the motives for staying closeted? That's usually where I start. What are the motives for staying closeted? What are the risks of coming out? And just getting real clear on the options, and do you like your own motives? Like if I'm staying closeted because of, I don't know, fear of losing my job, like if the risk is really high, or in this case, fear of like a family member never talking to me again and excluding me from stuff, you know what I mean? Like, am I ready to take that risk? So once you're clear on the risks and your reasons for doing or not doing something, then like it can be a little bit easier to say, okay, what would the conditions need to be for me to be comfortable taking that risk? So if this person is going to stop talking to me and I'm going to expect that could be an outcome, or then what do I need to be emotionally equipped for, have my friends nearby for, what conversations or like words might I use so that I don't have to figure them out on the spot? It tends to be that kind of self-assessment. And I imagine with your partner, a coupleship assessment. But I think coming out is what happens when like the risk of staying closeted feels higher than the risk of coming out, like the discomfort of being unseen is greater than the discomfort of being seen. So only you will know when that is the case. And when it comes to like actually telling people, if you do decide with your partner to tell people, you're going to get questions. You're going to get people projecting their shit onto you. People who've been cheated, that's their only, experience of having multiple partners is done in a dishonest way, and they're going to project that onto you. That happens. Or they're going to have their own problems with like sexual morality and, project that onto you. So like you start to become this receptacle for their like wrong understanding of you, their own shit they put on you. And so feeling like really secure with people, like especially before and after that kind of event, I'll usually have something that grounds me before, people I can go spend time with after, like to bookend that kind of experience just in case it goes poorly. Decide what questions you do and don't want to answer, and how you might deflect or change the subject or kindly redirect, and often I will like, it can help how I've approached this is like sort of being in control of the conversation a bit. So like bringing a cake and saying like, hey, here's a cake and I have things to tell you. So let's eat cake while I tell you things, And then that also is like me kind of asserting a loving but firm, clear, I'm facilitating this, Obviously, this is my style. If this rings false for you, you don't have to do it at all. But just as an example of like whatever it is that makes you feel, like you're standing ground, And so, yeah, here's a cake. Let's all eat. And then, okay, let's clean up, So something that has like a before and after, so that you're not just sitting there on the sofa for 4 hours talking about it. Like, is there a way that you can pivot when you're done talking about it or when the conversation gets unproductive? What might that be? So that's just an example. But like sometimes people go for a walk has to end at some point. So you just talk about it there. And then if you switch locations, if you switch activities, it can keep it moving and not make the whole day about that. So I don't know if that's helpful if you are deciding to come out, but yeah, talk with your partner about what's at stake and what you might do depending on their reactions. Oh, a follow-up to that. He is worried about being judged by his family and friends. He exists in very toxic masculine circles, including within his family, as far as he thinks. Because he is monogamous, they don't need to know. Oh, so your partner is not ready to have the difficult conversation. Your partner is not ready to be out, it sounds like, or not willing to take that risk yet. So if that's the case, if he is feeling like the risk of being seen is greater than the risk of hiding it, then can we flesh that out? Can we talk about it? Like, what are you worried about? Why, like, do you, and being clear about like how it continues to affect you, and can you very much factor that in? And like, can we create a game plan for a path to coming out, and what would the conditions need to be for you to feel a little bit more comfortable, things like that. So, teamwork on like, if it's a non-starter within your within your duoship, if that's already a non-starter and you're not like both in alignment, then what would the path to being on the same page look like? And can you like try to remove that block first? Easier said than done. I don't want to be flippant about it. Next question in the chat. I find it uncomfortable hearing that I am the favorite or the best from a partner with other active relationships. It feels disrespectful to others, even though I'm sure it's shared in a loving and non-malicious way, possibly not even considering the other person. In this case, I wonder if it is authentic or automatic. It feels hierarchical, which does not fit with my own relationship style. Am I overthinking or petty, or something I should manage my own feelings around, or is this something worth discussing? Yeah, I mean, if you don't like that, like, I imagine if you're being called the favorite, usually the intent is to make you feel good or make you feel safe, and it's a leftover from monogamous thinking. It's not just hierarchical of like placing you above other people. It's also monogamous where we like reassure people, you're the one, you're the real one, these other people aren't the one. It's a version of that. It's like a polyamorous adaptation of that, and it's often, like you said, it's not malicious. I imagine the intent is to be loving to you. And so I often reframe it like, would you be willing to say a different thing? Whatever you want that thing to be. Would you be willing to say that I'm amazing instead of the best? Like something that feels, that does what your partner wants it to do. What would the phrase or word be that actually is received as loving rather than making you uncomfortable? So that's usually, I just try to redirect and I validate what they're trying to do, because sometimes people, like a pushback on that, sometimes people will take that as like a moral judgment. I don't know if that would be the case, but be like, it's really hierarchical the way you do that. Like that can now start a combative fight, rather than being like, hey, would you be willing to say this instead? Because I would love to not feel like I'm above my metas. I want to be on level ground, like saying I would love this, and this is how I view the relationship, and this makes me uncomfortable. And so that is an invitation to also have your partner, be a bit introspective. I guess I do that, or like, oh, maybe they do get defensive, and depends on where they're at in their own work. But if you're thinking it, it's like I said earlier, if you're thinking it, then it's gonna be an issue. Like, so can you find a way to say it? Like otherwise it becomes like this block, and it either comes out sideways, or you start to like hold back, or be weird, or, it's there. And so can we put some sunlight on it and maybe take the power out of it? Okay, next question. I know intellectually that my partner wanting other relationships doesn't mean I'm a bad partner, but I can't stop thinking things like, if I was better in bed or less anxious and needy, they wouldn't want to date other people. How do you get past the idea that your partner wants polyamory because you're not enough? The body can take a minute to catch up to the brain, so anxiety likes to tell us stories. It is comfort seeking, so it's this like feeling of, there's a tension here. I don't know why they want other partners. So it must be, and you fill in the blank, the unknown, or the change, the newness of that can feel very uncomfortable. It's like a question mark in a lot of ways. And And so the brain just wants to like jump to, well, it must be because I'm bad in bed, you know, like the certainty, even if it's a painful certainty is way more comfortable than ambiguity or unknown. So I try to avoid telling other people's stories for them. Like they must be doing this because they think that I'm not in their head and I'm not them. So like I try to avoid that. And ask. Sometimes I ask. It's vulnerable to ask. So I don't know what your relationship is with this person if you feel comfortable doing that, but I ask for validation or reassurance and just clarifying this is not the reason, right? Because my brain's telling me this is the reason. And it can be kind of nice to take the power out of it and like be together in that moment, because many of us have had that thought, because that's the monogamous programming, is that like in romantic or sexual love, like two people equals a whole. They are your other half, you know? And so therefore, if they want something else, that means you're not a complete half, right? That something's missing. That's the monogamous story, but it's only for romantic and sexual love. Like it's not for abundance in friendships or abundance in family or abundance in like community love. You know, there's the ability to have abundance everywhere else. Why is there that? But like you said, you intellectually know that, but your body hasn't caught up yet. So getting past it, I think, what reassures you? What reassures you? What can you reach for when you have that thought? What can you say in talking back to that thought? Sometimes talking back to it can be helpful in just being like, you are not me and you are not absolute truth. You are a voice. You are a message that was given to me. Actually, the truth is this, How can your partner be sensitive to you? If you have a sensitivity around your anxiety, then if someone is like coming back talking about how unbothered and, relaxed their other partner is, like that would be pretty insensitive, So equipping our partners with, these are the things that my brain is telling me, please don't give it ammunition, And yeah, I often say that I imagine love as a garden, that it can be small, it can be big, it can be varied, it can be not. And it's like kind of an ecosystem. So it is not a two halves make a whole. It is, an ecosystem. Be gentle with yourself and your nervous system. I will also gently push back on the word needy. You mentioned that you don't like that you're needy. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to have needs. Period. Right? Like end of sentence. A part of you is aching and wants care. If it feels disproportionate to the situation, okay, well then there's bigger pain from elsewhere that's being added to it, but it's still valid, and you're allowed to have needs. So I would love to encourage not using that term in a derogatory way, as if it's a moral failing to want comfort, to want reassurance, to feel like you're not totally set yet, because it's not. It's not a moral failing. It is an indication of your current level of feeling safe. And if you don't super feel safe yet, then what can we do to support you to feel safe? But you're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to take up space. Our needs don't always get filled from the people we want to fill them, or they don't always get filled in the ways that we have in mind, but you're still allowed to have them and ask for things and figure out how to meet those needs. So in our last 5 minutes, if you have any more questions in the chat or just thoughts on your mind. I do want to say, so I know that a lot of Americans are going home for Thanksgiving, and especially especially white Americans, but a lot of people voted for the MAGA train, and so I imagine maybe you're lucky and you don't have people like that in your extended family, but if you are going back and you are sharing space and spending time with people, if it's safe, are you down to challenge family members on their bullshit? To some degree. That's my thought, because if they love you, if they care about you, then you might be in a position, in the best suited position, to get through to them in some way or change their mind in some way. Maybe not. MAGA's a cult survivor here. It's hard to deprogram. So I wouldn't say go in expecting to change anyone's minds, but rather to like yourself at the end of the day, saying, I didn't just tolerate comments that weren't cool. So it's more of like, self-advocacy and advocacy for people who aren't in the room. Are you willing to do that? But again, safety first, and maybe you tailor your approach if it's not your own family. I mentioned that in the last video too. But if it is your family and they want to spend time with you, then I'll say that my most successful pushback has come in the form of questions. And honestly, in deprogramming from the cult that I left, like the questions helped the most. And I did not engage with them at the time that they were asked. And I was very stubborn and I doubled down at the time, but the question stayed with me. The question mark stayed with me and I kept like sitting with it and asking it. So like, I think it's really powerful to give someone a question mark. Why is it that you think that? Or why is it that you feel that way? Why do you feel comfortable telling me that? Did you know that when you talk about not caring about someone's pain, did you know that that pushes me away? That I feel less close to you? Did you know that? Like, whatever it is, speaking to the moment, the present moment, talking about emotions, don't go high and intellectual with it, because the whole right-wing movement at the moment, for the most part, is guttural. It is coming from pain and anger and hatred of a lot of people, and but it is not something that you argue with at an intellectual level. It is like speaking to an emotion. So if it is your family, if you do care about them, then sometimes I will mention how what they're saying impacts our own relationship even, if that's helpful. I will say, okay, if anybody is hostile or combative, like I had a cousin who was just a little piece of shit, and he just wanted to debate bro me, right? If it is anything like that, and it's like trying to instigate, trying to trigger the libs, right? Like trying to make you upset so that they can win. There's unfortunately too many of those people in the mix. Laugh at them. They hate it. They hate it. You don't play their game, right? Because there's no use in actually engaging in an argument, because they're not arguing in good faith if their goal is to make you upset. So if you get upset, if you get heated, if you start to get concerned, or like if you're wasting precious energy and time, that's what they want. They want to upset you and drain you and feel like they won. So I just laugh at them. It can be very effective. Depending on the topic, I might mock their source as well. Like, Charlie Kirk said it, the guy who can only debate teenagers and goes to colleges. He only can debate kids half his age. That's who you're looking to for advice. Like, for example, right? Like I like springtime for Hitler it. So I just want to empower anyone with that. If you have that specific type of asshole in the mix. Okay. Last question. How are you feeling being an American outside of the US right now? I'm in the same position and it has felt absolutely surreal over the last few weeks. I would say over the last years, really in 2020, I moved to Germany in 2020, in March of 2020. And then everything broke out in the summer of 2020 and I felt a lot of guilt. I felt a lot of shame. I felt a lot of like, my body should be there on the front lines. Like, and who's that helping? So like, I was like, okay, well, what can I do digitally? What if I was incredibly ill? What if I could not leave my home and I was still in the country, but like I could do something in that position? So this is not so dissimilar. I'm not able to physically be there. What can I do? And so I've been, just checking in on people, checking in on different communities and groups. Like, how are you doing? I have a lot of different, like, sort of, nuclei of people that I love. How can I help? How can I get the word out? What power do I have to support you? When I have extra money, I try and, allocate it in a way that they say would be helpful. But yeah, I've not felt very surreal because I expected that it would happen, unfortunately, and I'm not surprised. And I've felt to a degree ready. So I have been grieving, but I've also felt ready because I'm already in active groups. Like, what can we do? Boots on the ground, you know? Even if my boots are not physically on the ground. So that's been where my head's at, is more like grief, anger, and then turning it into action. This tends to be how I'm going. But honestly, like here, the AfD in Germany, fucking neo-Nazis, right? So it's the same fight. Because it is the same fight, is like, what can I do here too? You know, so people I love back home, but also my boots can be on this ground. What are we doing? So that's where I'm at. But I think wherever you're at is valid. It's a weird time. It's a weird time to be an American watching this happen. So anyway, I guess we're ending on that note. This has been lovely. Thank you so much for your questions. I hope I can be of service. As always, my opinions, my judgment, take what resonates, leave the rest, you know? We all got our own way of doing things, but hopefully it can be helpful. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. And my next one will be in 2 weeks on the 1st of the month. So I will see you all then. Thanks so much. Bye.